welcome to Comcast Community Concerns. My name is Tonya Barnhill, and I'm going to be your host today. We're going to do something just a little bit differently. We're going to talk to Ben Hasan, the official host of Comcast Community Concerns. Good day, Ben. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic, Tonya. About yourself?
I'm doing great. Isn't this different being on the opposite side of this table?
Oh, absolutely, Tonya. But I'd rather be on the opposite side of just being here with you this evening, trying to give you an outlook, or give the community outlook on myself. So I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do this.
I think this we're going to have a very interesting 20 minutes or so talking about you and Comcast Community Concerns. Let's just jump right in there. Tell me, how did this show come about, Comcast Community Concerns?
Well, Comcast Community Concerns came about really that one day I happened to call Comcast. I was doing a radio program, Can We Talk, on WKZK.
Okay.
And I was calling Comcast about some advertisement on my radio program, and I talked to Bill Botham.
Okay.
Bill Botham actually said to me, Ben, I'm not the person that you need to be speaking with, and refer to that person's name. But at the same time, Ben, I am familiar with you, and I would like to know, will you be interested in coming to Connect Live as part of being a media in terms of political analyst with Tom Grant, Cheryl Bass, with Austin Rose as the host.
Okay.
And first I said, you talking about Austin Rose program? He said, no, it's not Austin's program. Austin is the host of the program. And he said, once again, would you be interested in coming? I said, well, I took him up on his offer, and the rest is history in terms of me getting involved with Comcast Live there. And then from there, I spoke to Bill in the month, that was been October that year, and in the month of December.
This was this year, 2007, or we're talking
2006, I'm sorry, 2006.
Okay.
And then in December that very same year, I spoke to Bill about doing a program on HIV and AIDS, and he said he didn't have a problem with it. My first program that I done on Comcast Community Concern, where I actually hosted a program, it was on AIDS, and then the following month I done one on gang violence. And so from there, we began to start our own program with the sponsorship of Comcast and Bill Botham permitting that to happen.
Well, let me ask, since you brought up Comcast Live, sometimes people get the two programs confused. I know there's a visible difference between one is live and this one is not. But other than that, what's the biggest difference in your eyes between Comcast Live and Comcast Community Concerns?
Well, Comcast Community Concerns is pretty much my program that Comcast allowed me to have. And with that, I'm able to bring my own guests on. I choose my own guests. And when we talk about issues and things that are facing this community, I have direct control of that program. Comcast Live is a program that where I fits in sometimes as a part of being a part of the media panel in terms of giving insight in terms of what's happening in the political arena. So I'm more of a guest on that program versus I'm the host of Comcast Community Concerns.
Now let's talk about you for a minute. You've been a community activist for quite some time, as long as I've known you. What took you so long to step to the front, for lack of a better word? Was it just timing, or what was your process to get to that?
Well, my process really, Tonya, was that actually I never saw myself as being a community activist. I never saw myself as being a leader in any form or fashion, other than I just had some burning issues inside my spirit. And some of the things that actually hindered me from stepping forward was, number one, my personal history. You know, I've always been on the right side of the law. I don't take pride in saying that, but it is what it is. And with that, I knew that I just couldn't step out. There were things that I had a displeasure with and try to voice my position. I was one who didn't even believe in the system itself. So that hindered me, and that's rightfully so. I should not have gotten involved. That was one reason. The second is my grandma. My grandma, that I don't speak English that well, because when going to school, I just didn't have any regard for education. I didn't have a appreciation for it, because I was anti-system in a very real way.
From early years?
From early years. I mean, I just was a natural in terms of things that I actually learned, but I never invested in myself in trying to pursue education. I never had any use for it in my own mind. And then with that, I thank God for where I am today. But in a very real way, I know people have to put up a lot in trying to overcome the ground and try to see exactly where I want to go and what I'm trying to portray to the community. And that's another reason. And the third and final was the political landscape. Political landscape was also a factor in coming forward, because as I began to take an interest in our community and wanted to do something about it, I didn't just jump out and do something about it. I began to go around and talk to elected officials. Number one in particular, I spent plenty of time talking to former Senator Charles Walker, in terms of trying to get an understanding about this political process and where our people were suffering so much. I had so many complaints or concerns, I would say. And after doing that, I came to the conclusion that our biggest issue, our biggest problem was our people itself, in terms of the political process not working for us, because nobody has ever endeared us to the process. So with that, I began to just try to do something different.
That's interesting. So are you saying, if I'm getting you correctly, that Comcast Community Concerns was just a natural progression from where you were to where you are now?
Well, I would say natural in terms of from actually finally after getting ready to step out into the public arena.
Okay.
Going from radio to television. It was in my mind's eye. Not that not that it was a calculated move on my behalf.
Okay.
But in my mind's eye, you could see that it was going to be one of the venues that was needed, whether I'd done it or someone else done it. Because remember, also in stepping out, I was not trying to do what we were doing. I was trying to find someone who could do it so that I could support them, because those are concerns or the issues that I had with myself.
So you never saw yourself as being that person?
No, I never saw myself as being that person. I saw myself as being supportive of good leadership, and I still feel that way as of today.
I want you to go back and speak to something that you said earlier, and I want to know how you square that with where you are now. You had said in the past when you were younger, you didn't put basically much value on education. I think you're a bright guy, but you probably done better if you had applied yourself. How do you square that now with the state of education, not so much the state of the state of Black America, the state of our whole economy, our whole nation as far as education? How do you square that when someone young says, you know, look what you didn't do it and look where you are now? How do you square that?
Well, I'm not complaining. I fully accept full responsibility for where I am in life, but I'm nowhere compared to where I want to be and would like to be, where I was actually capable of being if I would have invested in myself for the potential that the God-given talent He had naturally given me. And I would encourage young people to understand, and people in general, that education is still the great equalizer.
Absolutely.
Education that's what made this country such a great nation. That's what made us as a people rise to the level of the confidence we have today, because we begin to appreciate and pursue education.
Okay.
So if I would have truly invested in myself, only God knows where I would have been at this time. But I just hoping if I would have been at the expense of not having the heart and mind, I wouldn't have wanted, because I still feel well about myself in terms of having something to offer and want was the best for this community as a whole. I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Let's go back and talk more about the show. Tell me, what is your vision for Comcast Community Concerns? My
vision for anything that has a media presence, has a public presence, is to always give the people the facts.
Okay.
And I'm thankful to have the opportunity for Comcast Community Concerns to people and let people tell their own story, whatever services or whatever opportunity they present for the public, but they can tell that, because we walk away from the table, we're always looking at things, and we have a very, a mindset that nobody's offering us anything or there are no opportunities, and that is just not so.
Okay.
We just have to look out and pursue the information. When people come to the show, they can tell people what they have to offer and where you can find me at, and they're telling their own story at the end of the day. I'm a firm believer in telling your own story.
Now, if that being said, how do you want to accomplish that? This show is going to move the next step forward, how?
It's going to move the next step forward. How? Because we're hoping as a result of doing this program that other people will look at what we're doing here and see the people who come to this program and say that I need to get more actively engaged in this process. I need to believe in America. I need to believe in this city. I need to believe in our mayor. I need to believe in our superintendent. And more important, I need to believe in myself so I can prepare an opportunity for our young people, because as we witness today, I mean, everything is awry. But it doesn't have to be. We can make conscious decisions based on programs like this across the city and across this nation and be actively engaged in this process.
Interesting. Now, I know you've interviewed the mayor and you've also interviewed Dana Bedden. Do you see a correlation between them and their message?
Timing. Timing for me here is everything, because right now we're talking about the mayor is a very energetic and a very optimistic person. Dana Bedden, same thing. Truly is on the top of his game, and with them at the helm of this city in terms of for the mayor being the mayor who he is, and Dr. Dana Bedden being the superintendent. I mean, we couldn't have it. It couldn't be better for this community, and we have to embrace both of them, be supportive of them, and just get on board and push this community to the next level.
I want to challenge you to something. I had an opportunity to hear, quite by accident, the mayor interview Dr. Bedden on a radio show, and I wish if you ever have a chance to get both of them together in the same room, I would love to be privy to that conversation, because I just think that would just be so exciting.
Well, I think you also need to be in the mind business because the first of the year I do intend to offer, even though I've interviewed both of them separately,
right.
I want to bring both of them together on the program possibly in the early part of January.
Okay, because I've heard Dr. Bedden say education is the lifeblood of the city. That's basically where the future is going to be.
I mean, I just saw him a few weeks ago up at Augusta State University, and he was speaking before a group of young people there, as well as people in my age, from my generation, and he was once again reminding them the importance of education, and also was giving them some statements that Dr. King made back when he was in college in reference to education. Okay. And what he said, Dr. King, he said, don't know when he was, what grade level, junior, sophomore, freshman, what have you, but he was talking about the value of education. But ultimately, Dr. King said, even people who are have criminal intent, some of the best criminals in the world, have great education as well. But what
Okay.
sets them apart is their moral authority.
Okay.
And so one thing that we have to do, we have to come back to the table with a moral authority. It means that we have to have the well-being, the interest of this community, and the interest of other people as well.
If I'm understanding, do you believe, or are you saying that you think to a certain extent we've given up that moral authority,
I think
or had
we
it hijacked? I don't know.
I think we've given up and hijacked simultaneously, both of those things,
Oh,
based
okay.
on who you're talking to sometimes.
All right.
And we have, because everybody, for what has been done to them, we're in an era where people are trying to get even. I'm gonna make them pay because they make me pay. Instead of trying to move on. I mean, the dynamic things about this year have been a very interesting year in some of the conversations that we've had on this program in terms of myself and my mentor, Grady Abrams, talked about the power of forgiveness, talked about Uncle Tom, talked about Booker T. Washington versus W.D. Du Bois. Those kinds of conversations is raising the level of dialogue in this community to the next level and giving people the opportunity to look at it and think. You don't necessarily have to agree,
right.
But one thing we're doing is creating a climate where people can disagree and not be disagreeable, as they say.
Exactly. Now, you said raising the dialogue, and that was one of my questions. I've heard you say that in the past. So exactly what do you mean by that, by raising the dialogue, and what does that mean?
Well, what that means for me when I say raising the dialogue, I mean that we have to realize, Tonya, if you say some things and I have a problem with, I totally disagree with it, well, I should be able to approach Tonya, whether you is on a private level, on a public setting. It could be a public setting that you're presenting your information at. I should be able to challenge you in reference to that and not have to degrade you in the process. And that's what we do. We tend to degrade one another because we disagree with them. And what is happening there simultaneously, I've actually spent the conversation from what you were talking about and to make it personalized and talking about you.
Do you think
and we shouldn't be talking about you. We should be talking about what you said. Well,
the person that's bringing the opposition, do you think that's part of something calculated they want to do to take that person off task, off the subject, to put their focus somewhere else?
I don't think many times they don't necessarily take the person off task, they take the community off task.
Okay.
So, but to answer your question, yes, in many instances it is calculated.
Okay.
It is calculated because the person who's presenting their message in their format, many times they clearly understand the person's not talking about what they were speaking about or not even entertaining that question. But many times the public lose sight of that and begin to say, you know what they said about Ben, or you know what they said about Tonya, so they're missing the whole boat. And that person has driven the mindset away from the conversation to make and personalize the message.
Well, if that's the case, how we as a public, how do we make sure either one, that doesn't happen, or two, if it does happen, steer that conversation back to the issue at hand?
Well, most time adults engage in this more so than young people do. And we have to realize that once we see that, we say, hey, we're not talking about the person, we're talking about the issues. So the community has a responsibility to do that, to bring it back, because the community is the one that's affected the most by all of this thing, getting outside of the box per se in a very negative fashion. We always talk about getting outside the box, and clearly we want to think outside the box per se, but we want it to be something that has a productive and a progressive mindset once it gets outside the box, and that is not detrimental and becomes a disease to this community.
But how do you cut that out?
By addressing it.
Okay.
And that's what when I mentioned much earlier, some of the things that we've talked about here on the program and pertains to the Uncle Tom, and talked about W.D. Du Bois versus W.E.B. Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington, where Booker T. Washington said, well, cast your bucket where you are. I mean, do what you have to do. Use the talents and skills that God has given you, and you utilize that first and foremost. When we wrote the article when Grady Abrams wrote the article about distraction and misunderstanding stunts communities grow, to address those things, whether you agree with them or not, if you want to have dialogue about that, do just that. So the community has a responsibility to get involved in this process.
Okay, one of the things that surprised me, I think one, at least from my perspective, one of the things that generated the most conversation, good or bad, was the whole Uncle Tom issue. I think that just had a lot of legs. I don't know if it had more legs than it deserved, but it just had a lot of talk in the community, and I was kind of, not concerned, but just kind of surprised that people didn't get it.
Well, it didn't just start yesterday. It started back in 1920, obviously from the way that it started. It started in 1920 when Marcus Garvey was the first one to use Uncle Tom in that negative connotation. But actually, Harriet Beecher Stowe, when she wrote that novel, she actually was talking about an honorable slave of a Christian character, a human character, and he was not a meek and broken down old man. This man was a man of substance, and as we begin to shed light on that, matter of fact, about a week ago, I got a phone call from a person who writes books, and we had a conversation in Walmart about Uncle Tom. He went and got the book, he read the book, and called me back about 3 days later and told me, he said, Ben, I'm so glad that you made mention to me about that book. He said, it said all kinds of chills up and down my spine when
Absolutely.
I actually read the novel. So it's a very powerful story, challenging, Harriet Beecher Stowe was challenging white America about the event of slavery.
Okay. Hi, you're watching Comcast Community Concerns. I'm Tonya Barnhill. We'll be right back at this brief commercial break.
For more than 8 years, Easy Ride of Augusta has been providing affordable and convenient service to the Atlanta airport. A fleet of 5 vans and 8 experienced drivers provide you with a reliable and worry-free ride. With 34 trips every week, it's easy to book the trip that fits your schedule. Join the thousands of satisfied customers. Visit EasyRideOfAugusta.com or call 706-860-4900 to reserve your next trip to the Atlanta airport.
Do you need your computer repaired or your office network maintained? Call the certified experts at 4Ts Computers. They have the largest staff of certified technicians in the CSRA, with hundreds of computers repaired monthly and multiple maintenance contracts with small businesses and organizations. All work is guaranteed, and our motto is, do it right the first time. We have the largest selection of refurbished computers in the area. 4Ts has 2 locations to serve you, 592 Bobby Jones Expressway across from Home Depot, and Windsor Plaza next to the post office on Peach Orchard Road. For quick and friendly service, come to Quickway Florists. Call our professional staff to inquire about beautiful fresh-cut arrangements, seasonal bouquets, centerpieces, and more. Let us help customize your funeral designs. Or stop by and purchase one of our pre-arranged bouquets. For all of your floral needs, call Quickway Florists, flowers for all occasions, located at 1335 Druid Park Avenue in Augusta. Quickway Florists.
Hi there, you're back watching Comcast Community Concerns, and I'm your host just for this one special show, Tonya Barnhill. Sitting next to me is the official host of this show, Ben Hasan. Ben, we were having a conversation about the Grady Abrams and the Uncle Tom and all that, and I wanted you to complete your thought.
Well, I was saying, and with that, we begin to learn how much misinformation is in our community. That's the moral to the story, that we are operating and we're trying to move a community forward, which will never happen on false information. You know, I was just listening the other day, and there was a gentleman that said that Einstein said that if you want to, the problems can never be solved at the level of thinking in which those problems were created. So we're thinking at the same level, trying to solve problems that were created on that level of thinking, and that's just not going to happen. So we have to raise the level of thinking. I go back to raising the dialogue we said much earlier, and that's what we have to do as a community. I think that has happened in a very big way over the course of the last year or so.
Well, then if that's the case, if you're raising the dialogue, that means you also want to bring in different voices. How do you make sure that those voices get heard? Because I always thought that they were there all the time. They might have been whispering in the background, but I always thought that they were there. How do you bring those to the forefront?
Well, by creating a climate. The first thing is just create a climate that's conducive for people to step out and not be afraid, because people don't want to be personal attacked. People don't want to want to be their character assassinated. People don't want their family to have to go through unnecessary things that are not pertinent to what they're trying to do, and that's what happened on many cases. And we're trying to help be a part of the process. We're not the only one doing it, but we're one of the ones that's doing it. That's our intent, even though we have not necessarily connected with other sources out there, but we can also see that it is attempting to happen as well. And that's to create a climate that's conducive for other people to get involved in this process.
Okay, let's change gears. We're at the middle part of December when we're taping this show. The election, the runoff was just a couple of weeks ago. January, you know, it's not only a new year, but we're also going to be looking at a new commission. So, and for some reason they always say that 100 days is the benchmark for something. So from your point of view, from your vantage point, what would you like to see this new commission accomplish in their first 100 days?
Well, I think the first and the most important thing for me, Tonya, personally, is for them to build a relationship with one another, build a healthy respect for one another. And not only that, with those commissions also build a healthy respect with their communities. I think on the outside of the table, when I said the black community here, I think that we are not a part of this process. We hope these new commissioners will get actively engaged and come in and invite us to that process, even though they have these different meetings and things like that, but try to seek out and encourage people to get involved in this process. I need your help. I need your support. I don't just need you in City Hall. I need you doing things in your community. I need you doing things at the school board level. I need you doing things across the board. So I'm hoping that they also create, create a climate that it has an inviting spirit for the people to get in, for the citizenry to get involved in this process.
So you said earlier, so do you think at the commission that we have now, middle part of December, they just have just a basic disrespect for each other, or is it genuine dislike? Is it a theology difference?
Well, one thing about it, we all know that they're not talking to one another.
Okay.
And see, and politics is the art of compromise. You know, if you look around the table, whether it's can we talk, let's talk about it, and all those kinds of things, people and issues, all those kinds of things, everything has a talking, as though there's a conversation needs to be had. But our commissioners are not talking to one another. So they're not talking to one another. How can the community move forward? So and it's across the board. It's not on one side of the table. It is across the board that there are no relationships there. So as a result of that, the community suffers at the end of the day because we buy into it. We have to realize our leadership is just like the parents of the household.
Okay.
What the parents do is what the kids going to do. And as the kids at this point, is me and you as citizens of this community, we're going to do exactly what they do because they're setting the table. And so as a result of that, there's distrust in the community because there's distrust in leadership positions.
But what happens when the kids know better?
When the kids know better, eventually the kids have to step up to the plate as we are doing now. These are the kids hollering. These are kids howling from the rafters that you all know better. So that's what we are doing now.
I like that. Let me ask. I want to ask you about the three new commissioners that are coming in. I'm not going to count down Grantham since he has been there before, nor Jimmy Smith since he was unopposed. But give me your take on Corey Johnson for District 2, Al Mason for District 4, and Joe Jackson for District 6. What do you see? I know you've interviewed all three of them, I do believe, at length and talked with them at length. What do you see happening, and do you think that we're putting too much pressure on these three men to do something in 100 days that other folk couldn't have done in 8 years?
Well, no, I don't. I'm gonna do a 6-4-2.
Okay, that's fine.
Joe Jackson, I think is going to be good for this community because one thing that stuck out with me in terms of what Joe Jackson said beyond everything else he did say in the course of running for that seat is that when I asked him about race, he said, Ben, I'm just not going to continue to talk. We just have to work on it, leave it alone. We're not going to continue to beat that dead horse, and we just community forward. That was his position about that. With that, that was a very unusual comment.
Yeah.
I was expecting more.
Right.
But that was his position. I respect it, and only time will tell. But right now, I trust him. I give the benefit of the doubt that he's willing to work to move this community forward. So I trust him with that.
Now, I guess, and not mean to cut you off, but I guess, and this might be an unfair question for you, but that being said, even when I was running, I always said, race is important. It's part of the issue on the table, but sometimes it's not every issue on the table. So how is he going? I wonder how he's going to address an issue that is clearly racial, be that good or bad, because I don't think every time you bring up something racial is necessarily something negative. I'm just wondering how he's going to, because he does have I'm not sure of his percentage, but he does have a sizable percentage of black folk that live in that district.
Well, he has a 43% black, he has 51% white, and the rest is other.
Okay.
And so that will come up in terms of people may bring it up. But if a person focuses on what the issues at hand, that's when you can get around it.
Okay.
It can be gotten around. If a person can look at an issue, and very few of us can in this community because we've been infected by what was in the air in our community.
Okay.
But once we learn how to look at the issues that's beforehand and making an informed decision based on information and the decision that we're trying to make, we'll be able to do that. And we hope this community get there, that they won't see black and white, they will see it for what it is, what's before them, about the issue that they're trying to get accomplished. And I'm hoping he has the ability to do that.
Okay, next district.
Al Mason. Al Mason, I think Al Mason has been running for the last 2 years. I think we know Al Mason, the community got to introduce him more so than any other person in that regard. And with that, I think Al is going to be good for District 4. It's a district that myself and you live in.
Yeah, we do live in District 4.
And I think he's going to be very good for this community. We encourage him already to try to get people involved in the process.
Hold that thought. You're watching Comcast Community Concerns. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Do you need your computer repaired or your office network maintained? Call the certified experts at 4Ts Computers. They have the largest staff of certified technicians in the CSRA, with hundreds of computers repaired monthly and multiple maintenance contracts with small businesses and organizations. All work is guaranteed, and our motto is right the first time. We have the largest selection of refurbished computers in the area. 4Ts has 2 locations to serve you: 592 Bobby Jones Expressway across from Home Depot, and Windsor next to the post office on Peach Orchard Road.
We're back with Comcast Community Concerns. And I'm sorry, go on and complete your thought about Al Mason.
Well, I think Al is going to be good for this community. I think Al has paid the price. He's actually been running for the last 2 years. I mean, and yourself, when you got involved in the race in District 4, you helped raise the dialogue, and then I can see the pressure you put on Al and you as well as you put on Commissioner Harper. And with that, District 4 is going to be a vital part of this community and moving this community forward. Matter of fact, I'm hoping that District 4 sets the standards for the overall districts in this community.
That would be nice. Considering we both live there, that would be nice.
That would definitely be nice. District 2, Corey Johnson. I think Corey Johnson is a fine young man. I had the pleasure of meeting Corey over a year ago at a meeting, and talking to Corey then, I didn't think he was a commission material, but I watched him grow. I mean, he literally has grown right before my eyes, and with that, I think as a result of winning this race, he's looking forward to hitting the ground running. He has some great things that are already in place in his district, and I think he's going to take advantage of that, and he's going to help be a part of the progress in this community.
Now, how do you see the three of them working together?
Well, I don't know. That's a thing that they have to come and make that decision. Pretty much reminds me of Andy Cheeks, Commissioner Andy Cheeks and Commissioner Marion Williams. They got together themselves and formed a legion for 6 years. They would say like Siamese twins. They were called twin brothers by many people in the media. So that's a relationship they have to form themselves. Kindred spirits will find one another.
But don't you think at least on this, at least you can see that 2, 4, and 6 they do have common ground, because they are. Part of 2 is South Augusta, even though people don't realize that. Right. And 6 is definitely. 6 as well. So they're going to have common ground there. Absolutely. Common ground. Let me ask you, and these are 2, they might sound like they're the same question, but they're truly 2 separate questions. The first one is, where do you see this community going, and where is this community going? Because they sound the same, but they're really, really 2 separate questions. Even though they sound the same, and there are 2 separate questions, I'm going to try to answer them in one, because I think it's one and the same for me. That's fine. Because I think as a result of what we're doing here, I think it's going to have an impact in taking it where it needs to be going. I think number one, that has to find his own personal identity. Okay. And in saying that, when we always speak about community, we speak about what they're doing in Atlanta. We're the second largest city in the state of Georgia. We talk about what they're doing in Savannah. We talk about what they're doing in Charleston, what they're doing in Greenville. So Augusta has to realize that actually those are our competitors. Those are not our friends. So we have to find our own niche about where we want to go and what we want to do. And I think there's one thing that this community can do that's not being done that I know of anywhere in this country, and that is create an environment that's conducive and has harmonious relationships across racial lines, where you can actually raise your family and do business at the same time. We can make a conscious effort to make that happen, to get past all the personal agendas, to get past all the names.